Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello students. So in the previous class, we concluded up to second order partial differential equations with constant coefficients. And as I told you, in today's class, we will start with canonical forms. And we will see how we categorize a second order PD into a parabolic, elliptic, and hyperbolic PDs. All right. So let's start with our topic. So first of all, I'm going to share the screen where I'm writing everything. First of all, the topic is canonical form, but we are going to give some definitions. So a partial differential equation, a PDE, is said to be a second order semi-linear PDE, if it can be put in the form as R of xy uxx plus S of xy uxy plus T of xy uyy plus some first order terms. So you can use A of ux plus B of uy, something like A of ux plus B of uy. Obviously, A and B are functions of x and y. You might have some C of u equals to 0 or equals to some function f. So this is like a general semi-linear form. And this first order terms is really something that we are concerned of. So what we can simply write a second order semi-linear PD as R of xy, U of xx plus S of xy, U of xy plus T of xy, U of yy. And then we will just write a general function like f of x, y, u, ux, uy. Since it is a second order PD, we are interested in the coefficients of the second order term, not the first order term. All right. So this is the second order semi-linear PD. Let's call it as equation number 1, where we will impose a condition r square plus s square plus t square is not equals to 0. And we are also taking r, s, and t are continuous functions of x and y. This is something we are taking extra. All right. So we will basically be working with PDEs of this type in this chapter. So when we are talking about chapter related to canonical form, we are mainly concerned with an equation of this type, where of course you will have first order term, but we are mainly interested in how the second order terms are behaving, the coefficients of the second order terms are behaving. Together with that, we will impose extra condition that r square plus s square plus t square is not equals to 0, and r, s, and t are continuous functions of x and y. Keep in mind that this capital R and the small r for second order partial derivative, they are different. And another thing that which I'm using different is the dependent variable. So up until previous chapter, I always used Z, which you can also use in this situation, but I feel more comfortable using the notation U. So for this particular chapter, I will use U as a function of X and Y, where X and Y are the independent variables. That's the only difference, all right? So what do we mean by this canonical form, and how do we do the classification? So there is something called classification of PD in the canonical form. So first we have to we have to classify which type of PD is this one, and then we will do the canonical form. So our topic in agenda is classification of PDEs. So let's say the given PDE is 1. The given PDE is 1. All right. And of course, this condition is valid and this condition is valid. These two conditions hold true. Now, let's do some change of variables. Let us change the independent variables from xy. We can write from xy to xi and eta. These are very famous notations, so there is nothing particular about it. So that means we are writing xi as xi of xy and eta as eta of xy. I hope you are with me up to this point. So in a way, what we are saying is our uxy has now become u of xi xy and u of eta, eta, u of xi xy and eta xy. All right. And now we will transform this equation in terms of xi and eta. So u xx will now be transformed in something like u xi xi. But of course, there will be some extra terms because of introduction of this xi and eta. And what are those extra terms? For example, if you try to compute ux here, then u is a function of xi and eta, where xi and eta are functions of x and y. So basically, you have to apply that chain rule, and this will become u xi, then xi of x plus u eta, then eta of x. Similarly, I can compute uxx, and uxx will become u xi xi, xi x square plus u xi eta, xi x eta x plus u xi, then xi xx. It's the chain rule of differentiation that I am using for this term. Now I will take this term. So plus, I will have u eta xi, eta x, then xi x plus u eta eta, eta x square plus u eta, eta xx. You see, the minute you converted this u from the function of x and y to a function of xi and eta, where xi and eta are separately function of x and y, then simple this uxx is now giving you 6 terms actually, right? Similarly, we can calculate uy. Uy can be u xi, then u xi y plus u eta, eta y. Then I can calculate uyy, and uyy will become u xi xi, xi y whole square plus u xi eta, xi y, eta y plus u xi xi yy plus I expect you to write the rest of these terms. Huh? Instead of derivative with respect to x, we'll get derivative with respect to y. Nothing complicated. And we can also calculate uxy. Uxy can also be calculated. It will become u xi xi, xi x xi y plus u xi xi, xi x xi y plus u xi eta, xi x eta y plus u xi xi of xy plus you do the partial derivative again. Since we are doing the partial derivative of this one with respect to y, then you write down the 3 more terms. So there will be 3 more terms. Okay. Now, whatever we get here, we got the value of uxx, we got the value of uyy, we got the value of uxy, we got the value of ux, we got the value of uy, we got the value of u. Put everything back in the equation number 1. Okay. It will be a very long expression, let me tell you. But that's what we are going to do. We are going to put all these values back in equation number 1 in such a way such that 2 becomes a simpler or takes a simpler form, simpler or takes a simple form. That's it. This is what we have to do. So from here, whatever expressions I have written in 2, it can be shown that A of xi x xi y, A of eta x eta y minus B square xi x xi y eta x eta y is equals to 4 RT minus S square xi x eta y minus xi y eta x whole square by 4. This can be shown. Let's keep it as an exercise for all of you. Just try whether you can be able to show it or not. This is just a simple simplification. You just take these values in the left hand side and you take just compare whether it is equal to right hand side or not. This is simple to show. So in the canonical form problem, our task is to choose xi and eta in such a way that this equation, the equation number 2, will become simpler or will take a simple form. And that is the overall thing that we are going to do in the canonical form. Now, first of all, looking at this term 4RT minus S square. Now, how to choose this xi and eta, we will see that via some problems. The first thing is, depending on this 4RT minus S square, there are few concepts that you can draw basically, or that you can say. So first of all, what will happen? So this is always positive. So that means that the sign of this thing will depend whether this one is positive, negative, or equal to 0. So this is always positive. Now we want to know what will happen when you have a different signs of this. Okay, so let's say the first condition is when your S square, when your 4RT minus S square is negative, or S square minus 4RT is positive. So then this will imply the given PDE is of hyperbolic type, or it's a hyperbolic PDE. Similarly, when your 4RT minus S square equals to 0, or S square minus 4RT is 0, then the given PDE is parabolic type. Or parabolic PDE, whatever you want to write, parabolic PDE. And the third type is when your S square minus 4RT is less than 0, or 4RT minus S square is positive. Then this will imply an elliptic PDE. We'll see 3 quick examples. Okay. So the first example is del square u by del x square minus del square u by del y square. What is the type of this PDE? So solution, here our R is 1, S is 0, and T is also 1. So I can calculate S square minus 4RT, which is 0. T is minus 1, sorry, T is minus 1. So 0 minus 4, 1, then minus 1. So that is 4, which is positive. And therefore, this implies that 1 is a hyperbolic PDE. Hyperbolic PDE. Let's consider another example. Del u del t minus del square u by del x square plus del square u by del y square equals to 0. So here, since the equation is of second order, we are only interested in the coefficients of the first term, higher order terms. So here, what we have is del square u by del x square. So we have Laplacian. Let's consider 1D example, because then it will unnecessarily become complicated. So 1D example. So del u del t minus del square u by del x square. So here, what we have is our R is minus 1, but our S is 0, and our T is also 0. It's a one-dimensional heat equation. So basically what we have is del u del t minus del square u by del x square equals to 0. So here R is -1, S is 0, and T is also 0. So when you calculate your S square minus 4RT, it will actually give you 0 minus 4, R is -1, and then again your T is 0. So ultimately this is 0. And therefore, given PD 1, I can put a 1 here, is a parabolic PD. So remember, this equation is called as wave equation. It's a hyperbolic PD. This equation is called as heat equation. It's a parabolic PD. Now let's consider another example. So del square U by del X square plus del square U by del Y square. Okay. So here, let me call this as equation number 1. Here, our R is 1 and our T is also 1. So I can calculate my S square minus 4RT, which is 0, minus 4, 1, and 1. So that means -4, which is less than 0. And this implies 1 is an elliptic PD. Elliptic PD. So that means this equation, that is called as Laplace equation, is an elliptic PD. So wave equation is a hyperbolic PD, heat equation is a parabolic PD, and elliptic Laplace equation is an elliptic PD. Keep in mind. Okay. So just calculating this, you might also call it as discriminant. Let's call it as discriminant. So calculating this discriminant will give you whether the given PDE is hyperbolic, parabolic, or elliptic. Now, based on the fact that whether it is hyperbolic or parabolic or elliptic, the way to find out xi and eta will change. So we will learn how to find out xi and eta for every type of these PDEs. And motivated from that, our canonical form will also change. So if you have a hyperbolic PDE, the method to find out xi and eta will change. We will see how. And then your canonical form will also be different. Parabolic PD has a different method to calculate xi and eta. And elliptic PD also has a different method to calculate xi and eta. We are now going to see all three via some examples. So let's start with hyperbolic PD. I'm going to start in a new page. Example 1, I guess, in this chapter. So reduce the equation uxx minus x square uyy equals to 0 to a canonical form solution. Reduce this equation to a canonical form. So first of all, we have to identify whether it's a parabolic, hyperbolic, or elliptic. So in order to do so, we can compare it to that form, the general form of semilinear PD, which I wrote at the beginning of this class. And we will identify R as 1, S as 0, and T as minus of x square. So I can calculate my discriminant, which is S square minus 4RT. And this is nothing but your 4x square, which is positive, right? So then the given PD is of hyperbolic type. All right, that is the first thing in these type of problems. So I got my hyperbolic PD. Now we consider, now we are going to find out xi and eta. So now we consider the following equation. The following equation. What is that equation? R alpha square plus S alpha plus T equals to 0. A quadratic equation where we are interested in the roots of alpha. In the roots of this quadratic equation, which is alpha. So R is 1, S is 0 and t is minus of x square. So from here I will get alpha equals to plus x and minus x. So I'm calling let the roots are denoted by lambda 1 equals to x and lambda 2 equals to minus of x. So the roots of this quadratic equation, since they are distinct roots, I'm denoting them by lambda 1 and lambda 2. For all these three types of PDEs, parabolic, hyperbolic, and elliptic, we will solve this quadratic equation. It's just that the roots will be different. For hyperbolic PDE, there will be distinct roots. For parabolic PDE, the roots will be repeated. And for elliptic PDE, the roots will have a special property. It's called, they will be imaginary. All right. So since we have this hyperbolic PDE example, we will always end up obtaining two distinct roots. And I will call them as lambda 1 and lambda 2. Now I will tell you how to find out this the function xi and eta. So to calculate xi and eta, xi and eta, I will solve an equation dy dx equals to lambda 1 xy and dy dx equals to lambda 2 xy. Okay, so this can be written as dy dx equals to lambda 1 xy and you can take plus here. So dy dx plus lambda 1 xy and dy dx plus lambda 2 xy equals to 0. Or you can take minus, that's not a problem. So dy dx equals to dy dx plus lambda 1 xy equals to 0 will imply, now if I take this equation, then dy dx plus lambda 1 xy, which is x, which is plus x equals to 0. So if I integrate both sides, then it will simply give you y plus x square by 2 equals to some c1, some arbitrary constant c1. And if I take dy dx, and secondly, you can also put it below this paragraph. It's not problematic. Dy dx plus lambda 2 xy. This will be minus of x. So I will get y minus x square by 2 equals to c2. Remember, c1 and c2 are arbitrary constants. You might as well write it. c1 and c2 are arbitrary constants. So therefore, xi will be given by y plus x square by 2 and eta will be given by y minus x square by 2. So what is the choice for xi and eta? Basically, we calculate the value, the roots of alpha from this quadratic equation. You take one alpha, you take one root and formulate this ordinary differential equation dy dx plus lambda 1 xy, calculate, and that will give you y plus, so in this case it is y plus x square by 2. That will give you one function xi, and you take the another root, solve the same ODE, but take lambda 2 here, and that will give you eta. So in case of hyperbolic PDE, this is the way you find out xi, and this is the way we find out eta, by taking the two distinct roots. There is a small theory behind it. If you are interested, then I would recommend you to look into the book of T. Amarnath in the chapter 2, where they are showing why do we have to consider this ODE. But the working rule is you solve this quadratic equation, find out your lambda 1 and lambda 2, put in this ODE, this general ODE, dy dx plus lambda equals to 0. Now in place of lambda, you take once lambda 1 and then another time you take lambda 2, solve it. Okay? For lambda 1, you will get xi. For lambda 2, you will get eta. That's the overall idea behind it. So we found our xi, we found our eta. And now If you remember the calculation which we were just doing, that our uxy will now be a function of u xi eta. That means we are changing the independent variable from xy to xi eta. Let's write it. We now change xy, the independent variable, to the independent variables xi and eta. All right. So that means that is, or in other words, our uxy has now been turned into a function of u xi eta, where xi is a function of xy, eta is a function of xy. And one more thing, xi and eta, they are called as characteristics of your given hyperbolic equation. Now let's look back at the equation. It has a form uxx minus x square uyy. That means I need my second order derivative with respect to x, the value, and I need the value of second order derivative with respect to y. All right. So I know my xi, I know my eta. So when I will do ux of xy, then this is basically u xi of x plus u eta of x. Now xi of x, what is xi of x? It's simply x. What is eta of x? It's minus of x. Let's put them here. So u xi x minus u eta x. And I can calculate my uy. Uy will be u xi y plus u eta y. What is my xi y? 1. What is my eta y? Also 1. Let's put them here. But we are not done yet. We need uxx and we need uyy. That means I have to do derivative once more. Okay. So if I do, let's go to the next page. So if I do u xi uxx, then it will give you uxx, then it will give you x square u xi minus 2x square u xi eta plus x square u eta plus u xi minus u eta, and our uyy will become u xi plus 2u xi eta plus u eta. And now I will put them back to the equation 1. Have I put an equation number in there? No. Then you might as well put an equation number. Always put an equation number in the given PD. Even if I don't, always put an equation number. So putting the values of uxx and uyy in 1. That is our given PD. So then this will become x square u xi minus 2x square u xi eta plus x square u eta plus u xi minus u eta minus x square times u xi minus 2x square times u xi eta minus x square times u eta equals to 0. I can see some cancellation of terms. So this will cancel out with this will cancel out with this, and what we are left with is minus of 4, this should be xi eta, yes. Minus of 4 x square u xi eta equals to u eta minus u xi. So I can adjust the negative sign, and this one will become u xi eta equals to 1 by 4 x square u xi minus u eta. But the thing is, we cannot have x anymore since everything is now in terms of xi and eta. So note that we have xi equals to y plus x square by 2, and we have eta equals to y minus x square by 2. So if I subtract this from this, then this from this, then I will have xi minus eta equals to simply x square. And therefore, from relation number 2, from 2, what I will have is u xi eta equals to 1 by 4 xi minus eta times u xi minus u eta. And this is your required canonical form. This is called as canonical form for one, for the PDE one. All right. So there are several steps when you are calculating the canonical form. You always have to follow those steps, or you can call them as sub-steps. So the first sub-step is to find out what type of PD it is: hyperbolic, parabolic, elliptic. The minute you found out, you have to solve that quadratic equation: r alpha square plus s alpha plus t equals to 0. Find out your roots. Now, if the roots are distinct, because you have hyperbolic PD, the roots will be distinct. Then you calculate your xi and eta by taking dy dx plus lambda 1 equals to 0 and dy dx plus lambda 2 equals to 0. They will give you two characteristics, xi and eta. Now you found your xi and eta, then transform, first of all, see what partial derivatives you need from your given equation. If you need only uxx and uyy, like our example, you don't have to calculate uxy or other partial derivatives. Just calculate uxx, just calculate uyy, put the value, get the required equation in terms of xi and eta, and that is your required canonical form. Okay, so this is how we will solve if we are given a hyperbolic PD. But if it is a parabolic PD, then it will change. We will see now. So our next example is example 2. So reduce the equation y square times uxx minus 2xy times uxy plus x square times uyy equals to y square by x u of x plus x square by y u of y to a canonical form. Okay, this is our second example. Solution. So again, we have to compare this PD to our general form of semilinear PD and try to identify the form here. Okay, type of the PD. So our R of xy is y square, s of xy is minus of 2xy, and t of xy is x square. So I can calculate s square minus 4rt, that is 4xy, 4x square y square, and then minus of 4x square y square. So ultimately it is coming out to be 0. And therefore the given PD, I always forget to write the equation number. So the given PD 1 is a parabolic type or parabolic PD, whatever you want to write. All right, now we will solve. Now let us take that quadratic equation. Now let us take, and we will also see what will happen to the roots if you have a parabolic PD. Okay, now let us take substage 1 is complete. Now substage 2. So let us take r alpha square plus s alpha plus t equals to 0. So I know my r, which is y square alpha square. I know my x, which is 2xy alpha. And I also know my t, which is x square equals to 0. I will go to the next page. And the next page will give you y alpha minus x whole square equals to 0. From here you will get alpha equals to x by y, x by y. That means we are getting repeated roots. So in case of parabolic PD, we will get repeated roots. In case of hyperbolic PD, we will get distinct roots. In case of parabolic PD, we will get repeated roots. All right. And in case of elliptic PD, we will get some kind of root. I will tell you later on. So this is that. Now, if I take lambda 1 equals to this and lambda 2 equals to this, I will obtain same xi and eta, which will not make any sense. I need to have distinct xi and eta. All right. So taking lambda 1 and lambda 2 both same will not serve the purpose. However, one of them can be calculated by taking this as a lambda. So the function xi can be calculated by taking dy dx plus lambda equals to 0. Lambda xy, of course. So lambda xy is x by y. So I have dy dx plus x by y equals to 0. Now I will do the cross multiplication, and when you integrate, you will end up obtaining x square plus y square equals to some c1. Therefore, I will take xi of xy equals to x square plus y square. The characteristics is denoted by xi of xy equals to c1, eta of xy equals to c2. But the function xi is simply x square plus y square. When you use the term characteristics, make sure you put equals to c1. As I told you, taking lambda equals to same x by y will not serve the purpose. But we can calculate the functions eta, if it is chosen independent of xi. That is, how to check the independent condition. So you have to choose xi and eta in such a way that this Jacobian is non-zero. The two functions xi and eta, which are the functions of x and y, are said to be independent if this Jacobian, which is del xi del x, del xi del y, del eta del x, del eta del y, that determinant must be non-zero. So one possible choice of eta can be, let us take eta xy equals to x square minus y square. You can quickly verify whether xi equals to this function and eta equals to this function are linearly independent or not. Just calculate this Jacobian. To verify, by the way, this verification is not required. You can do it in a side calculation. To verify the independent part, the independency or independent part, independency, let's write independency of xi and eta. You just quickly check this Jacobian, del xi eta by del xy. So this is del xi del x, del xi del y, del eta del x, and del eta del y. You can calculate. So del xi del x is 2x, del xi del y is minus of del xi del y is 2y, then del eta del x is 2x, and then del eta del y is so this is 2x, 2y, 2x minus of 2y, right? So del eta del y minus of 2y. So this will become minus 4xy, which is not equals to 0 for x and y non-zero. So this is not equals to 0, and therefore you can say that xi and eta are linearly independent, and this can be one possible choice. So in case of parabolic PD, you can calculate your xi, but you choose your eta in such a way that it is independent of xi. All right. Now I will go back to, so the second stage is also completed. Now third stage is, now we change the independent variables. X and y to xi and eta. That is, our function u has now become u of xi and eta. Now the problem with this example is that here you need all the partial derivatives. You need uxx, you need uxy, you need uyy, you need ux, you need uy. Not only that, You also need your y square, your x square, your x and y, and all those things. Some of the terms will get cancelled for sure, but we need to calculate all these partial derivatives and put all of them here. It will be a lengthy calculation. Okay, I'm just going to write down the first order terms, but rest of the terms I expect all of you to do it by yourself. So ux equals to u xi x plus u eta x. So u xi, what is xi of x? Xi of x is 2x. So 2x u xi plus u eta x. What is eta x? That is 2x. And similarly, we can calculate uy, which is u eta xi y, u xi y plus u eta y. What is xi y? Xi y is 2y, na? Yes, xi y is 2y. But eta y is minus of 2y. Similarly, you calculate uxx, you calculate uxy, and then you also calculate uyy. Let this be a task for you. The minute you have all these values, come back to this equation and put all the values here. Okay? The minute you put all the values, your equation will transform into, so putting the values of ux, uy, uxx, uxy, and uyy in 1, then our PDE1 will reduce to, or reduce to u eta equals to 0. See, they are getting into a simpler form. That was the message, that via canonical form, we try to reduce it into a simpler form. So this is like a simple form. So u eta equals to 0. Now, as you can see, another interesting fact is that sometimes you can be able to solve the PD very easily. For example, in this case, your original PD had all those coefficient functions, and it had a first order derivative, second, and with respect to x, with respect to y, so many other terms. But the minute you transformed into a canonical form, it reduced into u eta equals to 0. You can integrate this equation very easily, whereas the first one was quite complicated. It was not that straightforward to integrate or solve it. So here we can do that. Here I can integrate. This is, you can visualize it that this way, del eta square equals to 0. So I can integrate once with respect to eta, and then this will become del u del eta equals to some function of xi. Plus I can integrate once more, and this will become u of xi eta equals to some function of xi times eta plus some function of xi as an arbitrary function. So f and xi are arbitrary functions. You can put f and f and z are arbitrary functions, Now I know what is my xi, I know what is my eta. So therefore the required solution u of xy of the given PDE1, because xi and eta are the functions of x and y. So you can write, instead of u xi eta, you can write uxy. Substitute the value of xi, which is x square plus y square. Then eta is x square minus y square. Then xi, which is x square plus y square. And this is the required solution of your given PD1. So although our given PD1 had a very complicated form, after reducing it to the canonical form, we can be able to write down the solution. We didn't do any method to calculate the solution. However, the minute we have the canonical form, the method to solve or to find out the solution of the given PD1 has become very simpler. I mean, in this case, we just integrated. So this is another essence of it, that it will help you to find out the solution very easily. In some cases, not in all cases, but in some cases, it will reduce to a simpler one, and then you can be able to find the solution. So we saw two examples, one for the hyperbolic PD, another for the parabolic PD. There is also one more example on elliptic PD. So how much time do I have left in this video? I have to check. Okay, I'm going to give you an example of elliptic PDEs anyways. Hopefully I will be done in this video itself. So another example. Another example is reduce the equation, because rest of the examples, they will follow the exact same methodology. So if the way I have solved for hyperbolic and parabolic PD, it will be exactly the same. The problem might change, the coefficients might change, but the method is always the same. So reduce the PDE uxx plus x squared times uyy equals to 0. I will call it as reduce the equation of PD this to a canonical form. To a canonical form solution. So as always, you identify your R, your S, and your T. So here our R is 1, and our S is 0, and our T is x squared. So I can calculate the discriminant s squared minus 4rt, which is 0 minus 4, 1, and x squared. That means minus of 4x squared. So it is less than 0. And therefore, the given PDE 1 is an elliptic one, or elliptic PDE. Okay. The minute we know the type, we have to solve that quadratic equation to find out the lambda 1 and lambda 2. So now we consider, what do we consider? We consider R alpha square plus S alpha plus T equals to 0. So here, what is my R? My R is 1, so, and my S is 0, and T is x squared. So if I solve it, I will get alpha equals to plus minus Ix. The roots are imaginary, and we know that imaginary roots occurs in conjugate pair, so therefore you have Ix and minus of Ix. Now, although they are imaginary roots, they are distinct. So in case of hyperbolic PD, the roots will be imaginary, the roots will be distinct, but they will be real. But in case of elliptic PD, the roots will be distinct, but they will be imaginary. Okay, so here I can choose my lambda 1 as Ix and lambda 2 as minus of Ix. And we can write the functions xi and eta can be calculated by dy dx plus lambda 1 equals to 0, and dy dx plus lambda 2 equals to 0. All right. So if I take dy dx, I hope it's visible. So if I take dy dx plus lambda 1, that means plus Ix equals to 0, and dy dx plus lambda 2, that means minus of Ix equals to 0. So if I integrate, it will become y plus Ix square by 2, and y minus Ix square by 2. So if I multiply by negative sign, by I on both sides, so then ultimately your solution will start look like this. Iy plus x square by 2 equals to C1, and so this one will become I plus, so this one will become y plus I x square by 2. So I multiply by I. So this, therefore, it will become y plus x square by 2, and eta equals to, sorry, and this one will become Iy minus of Iy plus x square by 2. Let me just quickly verify. So I will have minus, so I'm multiplying by I, so this will become Iy. So I'm multiplying, so this is y plus I x square by 2. So if I multiply by I, so this will become minus of, so this will become y plus I x square. From here I will get y plus I x square by 2 equals to some c1 and y minus I x square by 2 equals to c2. So I multiply both sides by I. So this will become minus of iy plus x square minus of iy plus I minus of iy. So I multiply by I. So iy plus yx square by 2, and if I multiply by iy, then this is iy minus of x square by 2. So I will take minus sign, so this will become yes. So ultimately I will have iy plus x square by 2 equals to some c1 and minus of iy plus x square by 2 equals to some c2. Yeah, I have to do some simplification. So that's that, and therefore we call it so therefore we take xi equals to iy plus x square by 2 equals to c1, and eta equals to minus of iy uh, plus x square by 2 equals to some c2. Also our we can calculate also if I add these two. Then in case of in case of elliptic PD, I write alpha equals to xi plus eta by 2, and I write beta equals to beta equals to I by 2 eta minus xi. Okay, so these are the two notations that we introduce, alpha and beta, where alpha is xi plus eta by 2 and beta is I by 2 eta minus xi. So if I do xi plus eta, then basically my iy and iy will get cancelled. Therefore, alpha equals to xi plus eta by 2, which is x square by 2, and beta equals to I by 2 eta minus xi, which I just told you. So if I calculate xi plus eta by 2, then it is x square by 2, and beta will be given by xi minus eta minus xi I by 2. So that is coming out to be in this case y. All right, so I have got my, therefore this will imply, therefore we have alpha equals to x square by 2, and beta equals to y. So now we have to transform the now we change the independent variable. Now we change the independent variables from xy to alpha beta. That is, what we are doing is we are doing u of xy equals to u of alpha beta now. Okay, so that's the basically working rule behind elliptic PD. So once you have the xi and eta, which are no longer real characteristics, we are more of interested to get basically transformed everything into the real function. That means alpha and beta, which is more like x square by 2 and beta is y. So now I will calculate the partial derivatives, which will be in terms of alpha and beta. So here alpha is a function of x and beta is a function of y. So ux will be u alpha times alpha x plus u beta times beta x. Now I know what is my alpha x. If I do the partial derivative of alpha with respect to x, it will come out to be 2x. 1, 2 will get cancelled, and therefore it will become x times u alpha. Whereas beta x, there is no variable x involved here. So that means the minute I do the partial derivative with respect to x, it will come out to be 0. So the second term does not exist. Then we calculate the second order derivative. We have to keep in mind that in our given equation, where is that? So in our given equation, we have uxx and uyy. So we don't need any other partial derivatives, or we don't need ux or uy. However, in order to calculate uxx, we do need ux. But as long as putting it into the equation concerned, we don't need ux or uy. So now I can calculate uxx, and this will become x remains unchanged. And if I do the partial derivative of this u alpha, it will give us u alpha 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 x plus u alpha beta and then beta x. But again, this term will not exist because the partial derivative with respect to x of this function is 0. So ultimately, we will have x square times u alpha alpha. Okay. Now, I also know what is my x square. So this is x square is 2 alpha, u alpha alpha, right? And then I will calculate uy. So uy is again u alpha alpha y plus u beta beta y, which is alpha y. So partial derivative of alpha with respect to y will become 0 because it is an entirely a function of x. Here it will come out to be 1. So u beta. Now I will calculate uyy. So uyy will become u beta alpha alpha y plus u beta um, u beta beta y. So again, alpha y is 0, and this will give you u beta beta. So now I will put everything back into the original equation. So putting the values, so putting the values of uxx and uyy in the equation 1. So what is my uxx? Uxx has become, okay, I think here we will have one more term because now we have to do the derivative of x also. Yes, so we will have one u alpha. So here there should be one u alpha. Okay, so this will become 2 alpha u alpha plus this will become u alpha. So let me have a look at the equation. So we have x's uxx. So uxx will become x square alpha x. So alpha x is nothing but x. So this will become x square. This is 0, and then here I have x u alpha. So I'm going to substitute everything here. So u alpha x plus x square times u beta, uyy. So uyy is u beta beta. So this will become u2 alpha, u alpha. Then here I have x. X is nothing but x. I have x. So I can write u alpha. U alpha, just u alpha, there will not be any x. So u alpha, and this is x square. So x square is 2 alpha u beta beta. So if I simplify it further, then it will become u alpha alpha u beta beta equals to minus of u alpha by 2 alpha. Yes, this is the required canonical form. This is the required canonical form for the given elliptic partial differential equation. This is the required canonical form. I believe for the elliptic PD, it changes a little bit in between. So that is why it might get a little more from the calculation point of view, a bit lengthy. However, the concept is same. The reason why we are introducing alpha and beta is mainly because we don't have real characteristics. So it doesn't make sense to continue with xi and eta. So that is why we introduce alpha and beta, which is calculated from xi and eta by using this form. Where is that? Yes, by using this form. So we wrote alpha equals to xi plus eta, beta equals to eta minus xi times I by 2. From there, we calculated alpha and beta. And now we convert our independent variables from x and y to alpha and beta in this fashion. You put it back into the original equation, and after simplification, you will get your required canonical form. So in this lecture, we actually saw 3 types of PDEs: hyperbolic, parabolic, and elliptic. How do we categorize them? We saw. some people also call it classification. So how do we classify them? The minute we classify them, how we can reduce it into a canonical form. So for hyperbolic PD, we have distinct roots of that quadratic equation based on which we can calculate our characteristics. For parabolic PD, we will have repeated root of that quadratic equation based on which we can calculate our xi and eta using that independent condition. And the third one is you will get imaginary roots of that quadratic equation where we will get imaginary characteristics. That means the characteristics are not real. And therefore, we introduce this alpha and beta to calculate the canonical form for this elliptic PDM. So 3 different types of PDs, 3 different types of rule. I want you to get familiar with all these 3 rules and practice as many examples as you can. And I will continue, I will stop this lecture at this point, and this chapter is also done. And in the next class, we will start with hyperbolic equation, one-dimensional hyperbolic equation, and we will learn some methods on how to solve it. So I would like to thank you for your attention, and I will see you in the next class.